Thy will be done. Teaching the Talmidi Israelite faith through the words of the Our Father, by Shmuel ben Naftali. Please visit our website at www.talmidi.co.il. Continuing Chapter 2, the ancient community of the Way and the Talmidi Israelite view of the Second Temple period. Section 13, the prophet like Elijah. The prophet Malachi spoke about the corruption of priests in his day, and that there would come a prophet like Elijah who would purify the priests through his fiery words. Such a prophet would also warn of a great and terrible day of Yahweh, a day of judgment or reckoning, if the good and just reputation of God's holiness was not restored. If the guilty priests did not listen, then there would be a day of reckoning for such priests. In Talmidi theology, Yochanan the Immerser, or John the Baptist, was such a prophet like Elijah. His ministry of immersion or baptism was primarily directed towards the priests of that time, warning them to amend their ways. Yochanan was also called to purify those priests who still remained faithful to God's ways and principles, and so prepare them for holy service in the temple. As a secondary ministry, Yochanan called ordinary people to a righteous way of life through his ministry of immersion. In the Christian tradition, baptism is about being accepted into the community of Christian believers, and is therefore only carried out once by most Christian denominations. However, to understand the nature of Yochanan's ministry and its impact, you have to understand the purpose of immersion in the Jewish tradition. You see, before anyone went to the temple, they had to immerse themselves in a mikveh or immersion pool. If someone went to the temple to make an offering to atone their souls of sin, then they had to immerse themselves first. As I have mentioned in previous videos, if there was no repentance beforehand, then the sin offering did nothing. There was no forgiveness. Repentance had to be there before the sin offering. What Yochanan's ministry of immersion did was to impress upon people that repentance had to be there even before the immersion. Remember, people immersed before going to temple to make sin offerings. You see, people erroneously thought that it was the blood of the sin offering that brought about forgiveness. They would think to themselves, right, I've made the sin offering, so that means that God has forgiven me. However, by insisting that repentance had to be there even before immersion, Yochanan made people see that what was in the heart was more important than empty ritual. And if people came to Yochanan for immersion before repentance, then neither did the immersion cleanse them of their sins. I am increasingly of the opinion that Yochanan may have been brought up in an Essene community. The Essenes practiced celibacy to keep themselves ritually pure, and therefore adopted children as their heirs in order to increase their community's numbers. The Essenes had originally taken themselves off into the desert to distance themselves from what they saw as a corrupt temple hierarchy. They never attended the temple, instead maintaining a way of life that kept them in a permanent state of ritual holiness and purity, which consequently meant that they could never have sexual relations. They already had a disdain for the Sadducean priests, and this shows in Yochanan's castigation of the priests who come to him for immersion. Yochanan is also recorded as having first appeared in the desert. Please see the links to the next video and my previous videos in the description below. If you have a genuine interest in Talmidaism, you can join our discussion group by sending a blank email with subscribe in the title to talmidi-subscribe@yahoogroups.com. If you have a genuine inquiry and want to know more about Talmidaism, please email thywillbedone.talmidi@gmail.com.